No. What song is that? Oh,
It's,
yes,
it's
sir.
I think it's a Lupe one. I'll send it to you after. Um, so welcome back, Work in Progress podcast. Hope you're all well. My name is Abdullah Adekola. This is a show where I have conversations with interesting people about something they're working on personally or creatively. The hope is that we can learn from each other and grow together. You can follow the show on Instagram. So who am I? I'm a Black and British writer and performer based in Leeds, UK. My breakthrough collection of poetry is called Nigrescent and comes out in the UK with Burning Eye Books in September 2021. My collection will be on my website, adekola.bigcartel.com, and you can follow me on Instagram at Adekola Poetry. So today I've got Nour K, they, them. Nour is a 22-year-old Sudanese journalist, poet, and writer, currently living in the Netherlands. They identify with the third culture experience of being brought up in countries that are not their own and yet making homes out of shared experiences. Their poetry collection, Emergency, explores the non-linearity of growing up and themes of connection, displacement, and
Thank
spirituality.
you. Thanks for having
So
me.
Nour, thanks for joining me today. Okay, so Noor, you talked about talk a little bit about what writing is to you. You said earlier on you said about before we were recording we had some technical issues. You just talked about writing being a therapy, writing to document
Yeah,
and to
yeah.
hopefully change the world.
So exactly, writing to me
Um,
is a way to deal with life's experiences, but also to share them. And then
mhm,
recently, it's become also a tool for me to uncover things and to learn about the world on my own as well. Like, it's for me to understand what happened in this world, what is happening, and then also to share that in the best way that I can. So, yeah, writing is all of those things.
Amazing. And and I asked about, what drew you to writing. Like, how did you get your start? Like, did you have any parents that were into it, or were you always just like a lover of reading and writing? Like, what drew you to it, or what kind of what
Yeah,
experiences might have
yeah.
led to you to
So,
be somebody who's
I was talking about earlier my dad, who is an author. Um, so I grew up like watching him
wow.
write and like having this like really huge library in the house, and then like kind of being very like obviously the books were all to do with all kinds of things like religion, spirituality, history, but also a lot of like medical like books and stuff like that. Um, and so like I'd be really curious and just like go and flip through it and yeah, like so there was this constant stimulation for like reading, but with writing specifically, it's like it's strange because even though my dad's an author, I don't really share my like writing with him, and like I don't really like I try to read his work,
Mm,
but also most of it is in Arabic, so like I can understand it, but it's just
mm,
like a bit hard. So yeah, but there was this like
mm,
influence growing up of like having a lot of books around the house and things like that. That for me, I just always thought it was like normal. Like writing is just like an outlet, and I just thought like I think when I was younger, I just thought everybody did this. Um, so I never really called
mm,
myself a writer until very recently. If that makes sense, yeah.
mm. Yeah, it does. Awesome. Yeah, I think that example of having, you know, having an example of somebody, like a father who reads, who writes, etc. I think it's really powerful, and I think, it's quite a known thing that children will kind of, you know, try and emulate what they see people doing, and obviously something like writing, it's going to serve you well for life and and in so many ways. Yeah. Okay, so that's fantastic. So you talked a bit about so just talk a little about what the tensions and there you talked about your dad, some of the books that he read were written in Arabic, and I think obviously that's a major language in Sudan, and also now obviously with you being based in the Netherlands, just talk a bit about just the kind of interesting things that you've observed, being in that, okay, having those cultures, an Arabic-speaking culture, and also obviously spending some time in Leeds, and then now being based in the Netherlands. So, what are the kind of not pros and cons, but just some of the observations that you've experienced of, growing up in
Yeah,
that
I
in those
think
ways?
for me it's very interesting because I grew up in Qatar, which is like, Arabic speaking Muslim country, right? And the culture there is quite similar to Sudanese culture. But then I'm also really connected to Sudan. Like we would go every year, and so I had that influence, like the African influence, and then on top of that, like the Arab influence, and then like the Western later on. So
Mm,
like the only thing
mm,
I could really say, it's just like they're different worlds. It's almost like
mm,
they're just different worlds. Almost like everything is the opposite. So like if being here is like super if things are very like individualistic, then being there is like super communal, so I
mm,
see all the like little dualities between those cultures. And like yeah, it's real. It's down to like the tiniest things, like for example being in the Netherlands, and like people being really like particular about like money and time and things like that, whereas we're a lot more like
mm.
you know free with it. Like so
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's
Time is a
exactly,
suggestion,
it's like
and yeah.
so but whereas here it like it runs the whole show, so it's very yeah,
Mm,
it's down to the tiniest details. And I think like those small things are just like reflections of a larger philosophy, and not like, for example, like the philosophy in Sudan is just that, like, you live your life for other people. Like we all live for
mm,
each other, rather than like,
mm,
you know, oh, like this is my life, and this is my time, and this is my money, and this is my things.
mm,
And things follow this like individualistic sort of like path, whereas like over there it's just like the idea is that your life does not necessarily only belong to you, so it belongs
mhm.
to this larger social context. But yeah, that I would say those are the biggest things that I noticed that are that stood out to me as like differences between them.
Interesting. Yeah, so I was born in Nigeria. I lived a few years in Saudi,
Mm-hmm.
so which is so in Riyadh. So like yeah, so I went to like a couple of years, like between ages 5 and 8, I would say, roughly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of and I actually used to speak Arabic really fluently,
Ooh.
based off of living there.
Mm-hmm.
But then I've been living in Leeds most of my life, like over 20 plus years. So a lot of my formative years in Leeds. So yeah, so I can, and I've only been to Nigeria a handful of times as
Mm-hmm.
well. Like and I hope to go more.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely those cultural
Mm-hmm.
differences around time and those cultures like Nigeria and um, uh, they are more communal. It is more about you put you put the needs of you put a lot of importance on the needs of the community, the family,
Mm-hmm.
and so on and so forth. And it's really uh, yeah, and it has its place and it really has its benefit
Mm-hmm.
because I think in terms of because a lot of these places, people, especially Nigeria, people are materially struggling a lot more than here.
Mm-hmm.
But those social bonds go a long way to kind of be a
Yeah.
buffer against those social bonds and the fact that, and not just material. I mean, they're struggling with the system sometimes. The systems that they're living in, like
Mm-hmm.
whether it's the political system or the economic system, it's not really for the average person. It's
Yeah.
not. It's really so it kind of necessitates like a stronger communal bond. It's like we kind of have to look after each other because even our government really is not really looking
Mm-hmm.
after going to look after us. So yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, so there's definitely there is definitely that those cultural shifts, and I think some of those things you mentioned are just about the timing, and it's like it's a lot of it's to do with the fact that what's important. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like to them what's important is like, listen, I love you, you love me. Like we, family. Like we're gonna get to the function when we get to it.
Hmm.
We're gonna stay longer than we're gonna stay longer than we said that we're gonna
Exactly.
stay. We're gonna
And
eat,
that's okay.
and that's okay. Yeah, we're gonna eat. Everything you bring, and then probably we're gonna bring some more food ourselves.
Hmm.
And it's and it's all this kind of thing. So yeah, so there is so there is and I think they do speak to like more wider philosophical things and cultural
Yeah.
things, and then what one thing I don't know if you can talk about this. So sometimes when I go, I notice things that I'm like, oh, I'm really kind of westernized, quote unquote, or like really kind of there. So like a small example might be like, like if I buy something when I'm in, like say Nigeria,
Hmm.
and there's trash, like like a wrapper of like paper or plastic,
Yeah.
I'll hold on to it till until I can try and see if I can find somewhere to throw it, and then other people
Exactly.
might look at it as like something strange, or maybe just
Hmm.
I don't know queuing, or have you kind of noticed anything that's when you're over there that makes you think, oh, I'm actually, I'm actually quite, I've been, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think the biggest one for me is time. Like I'm on like if you tell me like 4, I'm gonna be there at 4. And that's you don't do that because your ass is gonna get like, you're just gonna be there like waiting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I think that's a really big one, and like that also applies to like when I'm in Qatar, and I make plans with friends, and then it's like, hey guys, we're all meeting up at like, 7, and then I'm just like making sure that I'm there at 7, and then it's like, oh, where is everybody? So yeah, like definitely the time thing is a big one, and then also another thing is and I don't know, maybe you understand this because of the years or the influence that you've had, like being in Saudi, like people are can be quite like excessive, so like in terms of like they hoard things or like they buy a lot of things. Like for example, like growing up, my mom would always just like buy way too much food for the house,
Mm.
and like it's nice having all that food, but then like at some point you will have to like throw it away, right? Like there's this culture of like
Mm.
excess, and I think that's one of the really big tensions, or one of the big reasons why I don't necessarily like plan on like living in Qatar long term, is because it's just like that aspect is so pronounced, and for me it just doesn't work. Like I'm a minimalist. Like I recycle things, like I
Mm.
just, yeah, it's so that's a big one, I think. And if you're like going over there and being like, oh, we should recycle, like people are like, okay.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, the buying too much food is I can't speak to that specifically, but I kind of know what you mean in terms of so I mean like when we were used to live inside, I just remember that the cars being like really big, really huge, and I think probably
Yeah.
the Qatar will probably be similar because it's a Gulf kind of state and another rich kind of country like Saudi.
Mhm.
So yes, I think I don't know if you yeah, I think there's something to that where I think it's like you want to kind of something along that you want to prove to people that you're not poor, or maybe prove to yourself or prove to people that you're not poor, and that and that
Mhm. Mhm.
this wealth, and then also maybe there's a bit of fear just because obviously some of I don't know if some of these people, they're coming from lands and countries where like food was was scarce, and so it's like and so they still and even
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe in times where you have to kind of farm for it or grow it, and there's only so much things in your garden or in the market, and then so that kind of attitude might have translated
Mhm.
to even of now these Gulf states that that are so rich, and you can just go to the mall and buy a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So I think there might be something in that regard,
Mhm.
but yeah, yeah. And one thing
Definitely.
talked about being a minimalist. Yeah, I think you might be perceived as kind of maybe kind of weird and kind of like, well, is she like choosing to be like,
Mhm.
like, is it kind of zuhud,
Mhm.
or is it a kind of like rebelling against, like,
Yeah.
are you
Yeah.
pretending to be poor, or are you trying to
Like
be
what
like,
is that?
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
because another thing that I've noticed is that so obviously since the lockdown, like since lockdowns we've had lockdowns here, and actually I think probably like Qatar and places like that, they're even more vaccinated than the UK, but I think they're still on the red list because so I think there's some politics or
Yeah,
something dodgy happening there. But anyway,
definitely.
because my friend just
Hmm.
he's Egyptian. We grew up in Leeds together, but he's in Qatar working as an engineer.
Mm.
So he was telling me about all the
Oh,
journey he
nice.
had. He had to come to Ireland and quarantine in Ireland, like proper quarantine, like hotel quarantine, and this and that. And then after that, 10 days
Wow.
there, then he was able to
Hmm.
come to like to England, to UK, Leeds, England, etc. So anyway, but yeah,
Mm.
one thing I've noticed since lockdown is like so I've got into like walking, like outdoors and stuff like that. So like on Eid,
Hmm.
me and my family, like me, my mum, my sister, we went for a picnic, right? And so we were trying to invite like some of our
Hmm.
other family friends, but they were kind of like, nah, like what picnic for like
Yeah, like what
outside
picnic?
for what? Like
What are y'all
so
doing?
I think there's something to like I think it's still like outdoor stuff and like nature and that it's still quite new to like a lot of quote unquote
Absolutely.
immigrant families or whoever or people from certain backgrounds because maybe they
Hmm.
associate that with like why would you do that
Hmm.
like danger or poorness or
Danger. Because it's kind of like, yeah, like home is supposed to be like where you feel safe or where safety is. And if like outside
mm,
is usually not safe, then it's
yeah
like, why would you want to go to the wilderness? Like, why would you want to
yeah
go like to the forest or camping or like whatever it might be, you know? And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I struggle with that too. Like, I think twice
mm,
before doing a lot of these activities as well. So
mm,
I think I have that in myself as well. But I definitely notice it like when I'm back in Qatar and I want to do things that are like not, they're just like, oh, let's just be outdoors or just like, let's do like a fun outdoors
mm,
activity. And people are like, why? It's hot. Like, or just why would you do that? Let's just go to a
mm,
cafe or let's just go to the mall or,
yeah
like where there's AC and stuff like,
yeah
yeah.
no
So
it's just really
I hear that.
interesting
I hear that.
um okay so
Yeah.
so if you want to let's talk about emergency like the idea behind it
Hmm.
the title talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the title is there's like two layers to it. So the first one is obviously the word emergency, which signifies like that something that just needs to come out, basically. So it's urgent and it needs to come out and it needs to be said. And I think that for me is very personal. It just relates to that period of my life where I was just like, something has to happen right now, you know? And I think the book for me like
Mm,
symbolizes sort of like a chapter closing
mm,
and a new one opening up. So that's the second layer, which is emerge. So it's just like emerging from like
mhm,
a past version of yourself. So I always say like with this book that like I was introducing myself to people that I've always known because people were like, where did this come from? Like no introductions, like people were almost surprised, like, oh, this is what you were going through, or this is how you felt about certain things. And it's like, yeah, I just couldn't say that except with poetry. So
mm.
yeah, that's like
Amazing,
what the
amazing.
title
Yeah, no,
serves.
yeah, I recommend everybody to kind of, go and get it, read it, support it. I will be, I've seen you shared some of the snippets of it online, and it was really, it seemed really, really personal, really touching, and yeah, and I think it's always like great, brave and to be vulnerable or to kind of, decide to kind of tell your story. And it's important because it's like the documentation reminds that this
Mhm.
happened, this is how I felt, and it's my experiences are worth telling and worth sharing, and I think that's really important. That's really important. Okay. Yeah, and so I think so what are you
Thank you.
so yeah, what are your kind of is there anything else that is there anything that you're working on at the moment? What are your hopes for like, your writing in terms of not just poetry but journalism? Anything you're working on at the moment, what are your hopes in the next like, in the near future?
So at the moment, a lot of my focus is on investigative journalism, and because of like safety reasons and like politics, blah blah blah, I cannot really share exactly what kind of stories I'm working on. But like, I really, really, for me, right now, it's super important to document Sudanese experiences and like to really like dig into like any marginalized communities that we have, because at the moment it's like we're experiencing a very, very like sort of potent time. Like we're at like a transitionary stage, like so post revolution, the revolution ended in 2019, and so now we're kind of like experiencing the aftermath of this, and it's a very powerful time, and it's a time where a lot of social change can happen. So that's why my focus is on Sudan and on
Yeah. Yeah,
bringing to
no, that's
light
amazing. That's
marginalized
really inspiring,
communities. So yeah.
and yeah, the fact that if you can kind of help to highlight, to give voice, help to share people's voices, share people's pain, and their pain, their struggles, and also to kind of have an impact to where you're making some kind of positive change. In a place where with people that that you're connected to, and that's your heritage as well. That's very inspiring, and I think yeah, I think it's really
Yes.
important for people to kind of feel that they can do something, to feel like they can do something, and to get involved. I think detractors would say, these young people, what do they know? Like, why would they? What are they? But it's not really about being young or old. It's about having it's about having observing what's happening and having a desire and a will to kind of to do something, and then if you're trained in whether it's in journalism or whatever, then all the power to even better. Then it's like you can use the skills that you've developed to actually to push things forward. Um, yeah. I think that's really inspiring. I think that's beautiful. Okay. I think those are all the questions that I had. I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to ask, or anything that worth mentioning, or anything that we might have missed out that you wanted to talk about.
Mm, maybe just to comment on what you said about it doesn't matter like young or old, like the age. I think actually young people right now have so much power, like what I was just talking about earlier about the revolution, and like the entire uprising in Sudan happened because of young people, and everybody was doubting it. Like our parents were doubting it. Everyone was sort of like, is this really gonna happen? Are they really gonna do it? And 2 years later, it was like a 30-year regime was like toppled. So it's you, like young people have
Hmm.
a lot
Amazing,
of power.
amazing.
So it's always just like,
Yeah, definitely agree.
yeah,
So actually,
always
there's something
remember
I
that.
wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
So the spirituality, what does that mean to you? And yeah, what does that mean to you? And how, yeah, what does that mean to
Mm.
you? And how important is that to you?
Ooh, I love this. I love this topic. So, um,
Mm,
so for me, spirituality is both personal and like social, because so my family background is Sufi, and it took me a very long time to understand the difference
mm,
between like Sufism that's being fed or being sort of like popularized here in the West, and like Sufism that's actually being practiced back home. So I think for me, like for me, spirituality is also about roots and cultural roots, and just sort of getting to know what how your culture expresses spirituality, or expresses, like, their belief in something greater. Because to me, it's like, I don't want to be a hippie or anything like that, but like, it doesn't necessarily matter which religion you are in, or what sort of belief system or what spiritual system you choose to follow. It's like, we all know, kind of, spirituality is just like that very deep knowing that there is something that is larger than us, but that thing that's larger than us is also us. Like, it's also somewhere within us, right? That's a very like Sufi thing to say, but that's how I like interpret, or that's what it means for me. And then on a personal level, like, it's like, without spirituality, like, life would just be really confusing. Like, really, really confusing, because there are a lot of things that happen in my life that are like very, like, there's a lot of synchronicities, and there's all these like coincidences that are like way too accurate, right? That like, I would not be able to explain those things without like having like my Sufi background and saying like, oh, this is Allah like speaking to me, right? And other people might be like, no, you're just deluding yourself. And I'm like, well, it doesn't matter. Like, what, like, that's how I live life, or like, that's how I choose to interpret things, and that's like what makes sense for me. So it's cultural, it's personal, but it's also like, it really, it's life.
Amazing.
Like, it's how you
That's
make
very
sense of
beautifully
the
put in
world,
terms of being
regardless
personal
of
and it
what
being
that means.
social,
So
and and the fact that know, the belief in connection to something larger than ourselves, but also knowing that, and also that is connected to us in in some way. And I think that's very powerful. I think that's very powerful, and especially I think a lot of times people equate or use. No, sometimes a lot of times people, even with either within the faith, like say within Islam or within other faiths, they fearful, or they're kind of they're not fearful. I don't know if it's the right word, but they're wary of spirituality because they feel maybe they can't control it as much, or they sometimes the people religion is that kind of so you especially men in particular, that can be a tool for social control and so on and so forth, and they sometimes can either misunderstand or fear spirituality because it kind of maybe can subvert that, and so on and so forth. But I think there is a lot of, I think there's a lot to be there's a lot there, in terms of for that meaning, that understanding, and that connection, that helping you to make more sense on order of life. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I think I want to explore more of that side of my heritage, of my because I guess even the way my uh, the way that many people practice in Nigeria, and even my parents, there are a lot of the practices that you would consider Sufi, just a lot of devotion, a lot of set prayers and set words and things like that, and it helps on the, or it
yeah.
helps on a routine and kind of basis, but it also kind of, I guess it strengthens you as well in some ways, and opens. So yes, I think there's a lot there. There's a lot there, and I think that I want to explore. And yeah, and also you made an interesting point about not being like a hippie and this and that, and it's like that word spirituality it just means so many different things
Yeah.
to so many different people, and it's like capitalism and whiteness, and it has got its hands in everything, and it's like it's even reaching for like spirituality and like making its own versions of it, and like and selling it to us. So like you'll be you might see, okay,
Definitely.
okay, do yoga, do this, and then you'll go to the yoga, and it's like just a whole bunch of white people and this and that, like not a brown person. It's like not anybody who's like understands the context of yoga in terms of Buddhism and Hinduism or anything like that inside, and they'll be like, yeah, £60 for this yoga session, and this you get this free water bottle, and only when it's like,
Absolutely.
and it's like, oh, we're back. Oh my god. Ugh. Oh my god. Yeah, so capitalism is just trying to
Or like
turning
yoga
everything
and
into
beer.
a
Like, I
servant
don't
of
know if
it,
you ever saw
basically.
that.
And it's like trying to resist that and be critical of that.
It's horrible.
Yoga and beer. Oh my god. I've not heard of that. Sounds too good to be true. That sounds like a joke.
No.
Yeah. Oh my god. So yeah.
No. It's
definitely
real.
being
It's
like
real, and it's
being
very
critical
like
about
I'm
where
not
you what
Buddhist
you
or Hindu, but that I was
what you
just like
take
I'm
in, because
offended. Like, don't.
a lot of these and I mean, a lot of these, I think they just a lot of these things they just want to like, just sell you something. There's I think I like to be. I think there's a lot of critical thinking is important. Like, it's even when you go to like, these holistic New Age healers and things like that. See, a lot of them again, not to kind of just talk about white people again, but a lot of them they don't have an appreciation of like race, class. They don't critical, like they don't. It's just like like these positive vibes on these kind of things, and it's just not helpful.
Not absolutely not. The problem is, they think that spirituality means like we need to forget about race and gender and all and like social class. Like the point is to like delete those things, like not consider them in our worldview, which makes no sense, because then how you can never have a proper understanding of the world around you without that, like without the history and without like the cultural context that we're living in. So yes, spirituality is deep and it applies to people regardless of gender and race, but it's like you're missing the point. Like it has to include this. You cannot include other races or other cultures without taking into account their differences and like the different histories and why we are here, like why are we in these social positions. So like, and
Amazing.
that's the thing.
Amazing.
Spirituality coupled with like
I can't.
actual social awareness
You've got a
can
lot of
be
insight
really,
from
really
someone who's
powerful.
22. I don't know what like experiences you've had that caused this, or obviously having a dad that was a writer, that all helped. But yeah, I just couldn't. I just couldn't remember what I was doing at 22 and where I was or whatever. So I'm 30. I'm 30. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. No.
Wait, how old are you now?
No. I mean, no. I feel
You
like, I'll be
speak
honest with
like
you,
you're like
I
an
feel like
old
as
like
youthful
grandpa.
as vibrant
Like
as ever. I
you're
think a
like,
lot of it is
oh,
like
back
because
in those
it's
days,
like part of it is
I don't
like
even
knowing,
remember.
being more comfortable in your own skin. I think that's probably that's what I would answer. So hopefully as you get older and as you try things out, or if you reflect, etc., you get feedback. You then get more comfortable in your own skin, and that gives you a lease on life that is as that youth can also do. So I mean, I'll be honest, like I've got I think people, no one thinks I'm 30. I thought I look quite young, but I just tell them it's drinking water, and it's drinking water. It's minding my business, and just being a blessed youth. So there's a lot, honestly. So but no, genuinely, like it's really. I mean, I think
Minding my
it's not
business.
just you though. There's a lot, like when I speak to, even like my sister's like 8 years younger than me. So when I speak to a member of brother's 5 years younger than me, when I speak to them, it's like
Let's go.
their mental evolution is like it's quick. It's more and more. It's just like my brother, like he was like more have his stuff together than I was at his age, and then my sister, more than either one of us at her age. So I think it's just, I don't know if it's the internet. I don't know what's going on, but like people are just like evolving like or yeah.
Right. Mm. No, yeah. The evolution. Yeah, it's crazy. My dad said that growing up, he's like,
Mm, mm,
children, they have like
mm,
all the experience of like their parents. So they're at
mm,
like they're basically like at a later stage of
mm,
evolution,
yeah,
literally.
yeah,
Because it's like they have all these
yeah.
imprints, like they're not born
Okay,
a
cool.
blank
Fab.
slate. They already
I think
have all those
that's all I had.
understandings, and then they kind of
Yeah, I
like just
recommend
go
everybody
one
kind
step
of check out
further,
Emergency and
you
support
know.
that.
So that's a really,
And
yeah, that's interesting.
yeah, and I just yeah hope you. I don't know if you had any final thoughts, any final any queries before I let you go. Okay, cool. Well, thanks for joining us from this from Netherlands. Hopefully we'll see you back in the UK, or maybe we'll see you in the Netherlands or some.
Not really.
Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, fab. Well, yeah. Feel free to reach out. Um, we can go to another Starbucks or whatever the case may be.
You will see
I
me
don't know if
back
they're
in the UK
we've
in
mentioned
like a
Starbucks so
month's
many times. I
time
hope they're not
ish.
sponsoring us. They in it. They should. But yeah, no, thanks so much, Nour. Yeah, like good luck with
Yes,
everything you're
let's
doing, the
do it.
investigative journalism. Hope you continue to write, and yeah, thanks for speaking to
They
me today.
should.
All right then, take care. Have a nice rest of the day. Okay, bye. So I think I'm gonna I think it needs
Thank you so much. This has been so
uh
good. So fun.
hold on.
You
Okay.
too. You too. Bye.